welcome. The buzz is on. This week, Venture North takes a look at restoring log buildings with a team of experts. We'll also meet a family who's keeping alive the age-old art of bookbinding. And finally, visit a Hayward painter who sees a fantastic world in the confines of her own backyard. Get the details on these stories and more straight ahead on Venture North. Hello and welcome to Venture North. You know, in these parts, log homes and cabins dot the landscape. Some are more than 100 years old. So what happens when these buildings need repair? Well, luckily, the country's premier log restoration company is just a phone call away and headquartered in northern Wisconsin, just down the road, in fact, in Solon Springs. They're a fearless bunch of chainsaw-wielding carpenters, and they'll jump right in wherever there's an old log building that needs a little reinforcement.
It's a different thing every time. Every cabin's different. We have to kind of make it up as we go along of what we have to do to fix it.
Pete here is working on a mental jigsaw puzzle of sorts. He's replacing a corner piece called a crown on a vintage log picnic pavilion on the shores of Lake St Croix. To get the job done, he figures and measures and marks on a chunk of replacement wood. And then he cuts it to fit. Pete makes the complex job seem simple.
Stick a chainsaw in the corner and take the old roddy crown out, and then make another one out of our log pile that would be about the same size, and then fit it back in and make it look all pretty.
Back in art school, I had a teacher once that said she would put out a still life, and she'd say, "Draw me a picture of the space between all these objects." You know, think about it, and that's kind of what's happening here. What we're doing is we've got all these objects around, either in, top, below, and we're making an object that goes between them, and that's the concept.
As the founder of this outfit, Peter Edmonds has earned a living figuring out those abstract problems. He's carved a name for himself and for his family in the world of log restoration.
You know, we're a niche in a funny, specialized market. I mean, there's only a few dozen log builders in the country, and there's only a few of me. And nobody that, you know, as I said before, does it with the scale that we do.
Edmonds and Company takes on all kinds of projects, including lots of public buildings with historic pedigrees, structures like the Big Log Church in Coleraine, Minnesota, originally built in 1908.
There, instead of the joints being 90 degrees, the joints were 45 degrees because it was sort of an oval end to it. Well, if a 90-degree corner is a difficulty of degree of 3, a 45 degree is a 10.
The Edmonds started their restoration business in northern Wisconsin, working on their own log home. Their first commercial job was renovating the headquarters building of the Chippewa National Forest in Cass Lake, Minnesota. Foreman Jim Miles was part of the crew.
What we used to say back then is, boy, if they only knew how little we know. We're kind of making up the technology and making up the process to get the logs in and out and to do the whole thing. So that was 15 years ago, and now we're not making it up anymore. Now we've got so much experience at it that it all seems like second nature.
Now it's second nature for Jim and a second generation of Edmonds. Matt Edmonds has been involved in the business since he was 14 years old.
When you're building new, you're building from the ground up. and you always have access to the inside and the outside of the building, and then you can set your log right on top of the one below it. Whereas we have to work sort of in the middle with a log below us and a log above us, and we have to make that log sort of sometimes in an impossible way because of the way things are curved and the cusps and the joints. Try to wrap your mind around it sometimes. You don't want to do those right away in the morning or on Friday afternoon. But
The bulk of the restoration work is done with half logs, the rotten portions chiseled out, made smooth, and matched up with a half of a new log, usually from the same type of tree as the original. The technique stabilizes the building without changing its structural integrity or the aesthetic appeal of the interior. It's also a quicker, less expensive fix. But inevitably, there are times when a half log just isn't enough.
Now, you only have to raise it up an inch or an inch and a half is a big move for us. But, you know, the corner of that building probably weighs 30 tons. So you got to have a jack that'll fit in there. You know, we have a jack that's the size of a Campbell soup can that'll lift 20 tons.
The crew usually begins work in March and wraps it up by late November. The job takes them to beautiful locations across the upper Midwest.
about 4 weeks of the year where I wake up and say, you could not want a better place to work outside in this country, and also just getting to do the work that we do. Beautiful mornings. This morning's a little crisp, but you know it's going to warm up in the afternoon, so you're happy. But there's plenty of times in late November when the snow is blowing off the lake when you wish you had a desk job.
Really, I mean, it's the variety in the work that kind of keeps me coming back, because it's just fun to get out and, I mean, people work for 50 weeks a year to be able to come up here, and we just live here and do it all the time. I spend most of my time on the shores of some lake working on some house, and it's really beautiful.
It's neat when you're looking at the markings on the wood and whatnot, and think about when that person made, when the craftsman from 60, 130 years ago made that mark, and were they having a good day and were they having a bad day, just those things, and there's definitely a connection there to the past, and that's something I like about my work. We can find that connection to history.
The restorations really are fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun to take a beat-up old building and be done with it and have it look like a showpiece.